So one of the things that we've one of the strategies to work towards kind of combating the spread of the disease is what we call the suppress and release strategy. The disease, according to scientific reports and experience from other countries, takes about 2 weeks to, it works in 2 week cycles. So you monitor someone for 2 weeks. If they're negative, then they get out of the isolation. Or if you get the virus, it stays for 2 to 10 days or 14 days, and then you're negative again. So usually you kind of get the results every 2 weeks. We started this suppress and release strategy where we closed shops, we closed retail shops, we closed gyms and malls and cinemas and places where people gather and get in touch for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, we open them again. And then we close them again in 2 weeks. And then we open them again. And the reason we're doing that, we don't want to kill the SMEs, but at the same time, we want to measure the impact of social distancing. And we don't want to go into complete shutdown where you just stop life altogether. Remember, it's a medical challenge, it's a social challenge, and it's an economic challenge. So you need to balance between the three. That's the strategy we're working at the moment. So we are now in the middle of a suppress mode. So 70% of people in government work from home. All retail are closed. So only pharmacies, restaurants can deliver, and supermarkets are open. So where people can get food and medicine and banks. And you can't go outside in groups more than 5 people. And you can't exercise in public spaces with groups. So you have to maintain a distance. So now we are in the middle of this suppress phase. It's been a week, and we're focusing during the suppress phase on contact tracing, on random testing people. So we're sending cars to test people in random locations. So we just randomly test people, and then we're monitoring. At the end of next week, we will open up again. But this time when we open up, you've kind of shook the system. People started to see the impact of when you have a spike and what would be the reaction. And hopefully they would start taking precautionary measures when they go out. So they won't, for example, go out in groups. They would wear masks, they would wash their hands, they would be more careful not to be in confined places, and they would maintain a social distance between one another. And then we monitor again as we go during that phase. So that's the strategy we're following now: suppress, release, suppress, release, suppress, release. We want to try and avoid going into a complete shutdown or curfew.
It sounds very interesting also how you're doing that strategy, but you've tied it to very purposeful monitoring, because it allows you then to see how the suppression strategy works, right? And I think that's really interesting, is that you can actually kind of say, okay, we did it for 2 weeks, what happened? Then it was open for 2 weeks, what happened? And you can almost chart what the behavioral changes are. I don't really know anybody else that is doing this. I think that Taiwan and Singapore have a version similar, but it sounds very, very interesting in terms of what you can learn about your strategy as you move along. You've done this already. This is kind of, I think, your second suppression. You've had one release phase already, or have you not?
We had a gradual suppress over the past few weeks. We've started, as you saw the timeline, we started with closing off the beginning, closing off schools and universities, and then we started closing off the other offices. People work from home. And then this is the first full suppress wave. This is the first full suppress wave. It will end of next week, and then it will be open for 2 weeks with schools being closed, with work from home, with social distancing, and then there will be another suppress. We don't want people to lose jobs as well, and we don't want SMEs to get much hurt, because they represent a third of our workforce in the private sector. We want them to keep their employees. We don't want them to fire people. So it's very, very important.
That sounds interesting. We'll have to have a conversation in a few weeks and see what you guys learn, because I think it'll be in real time really important to see what you learn for yourselves and for other countries.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, we don't know still a lot about this, and we're learning as we go, and we're innovating, and we're trying different things. A lot of the things that we tried in here are things that nobody tried before, and we're just learning as we go, and we're adjusting. What I shared with you in all of the steps that we took, it took a lot of debate and preparedness, and usually those are things that we take as we go, the decisions that we take as we go, and from what we see, it's you just have to make sure that you kind of see in front of you and try and anticipate the risks and avoid them. So if you have a risk in putting pressure on your healthcare system, how can you avoid that? If you have a risk of not having enough masks and coveralls and you know, the ingredients to test, how can you avoid that? If you have a risk of people getting fired and shops closing, how can you avoid that? You just have to identify the risks that can potentially come in front of you, and you just try and take policies that would help you prevent that. And then we're quite lucky to have other countries that went through a similar experience as we're going through, and they're ahead of us by about 2 weeks. And we're just looking at their policies and just trying to adapt what works for us. We don't take it and just assume that it will work for us. We just look at our situation and we try and adapt to what would work here, and just try and manage that way.
Wonderful.